The morning sun spilled gently over the quiet suburban streets of Willow Creek, casting long golden rays across the neatly trimmed lawns. Birds chirped, sprinklers hissed, and the town seemed to hum with the comforting rhythm of a normal day. Emma Collins stepped out of her small but charming house, her hair still damp from a quick shower, and inhaled the crisp air. Everything felt perfect. Too perfect, as she would soon discover. Emma waved to Mrs. Halstead, the elderly neighbor tending her roses. "Good morning, Mrs. Halstead," she called cheerfully. The old woman smiled and nodded, her eyes crinkling at the corners. Down the street, children chased each other on bicycles, their laughter carrying on the wind. It was a morning that whispered safety, community, and ordinary life. Emma worked at a local charity, helping coordinate community events and volunteer programs. Her colleagues adored her, and her friends described her as dependable, kind, and endlessly trustworthy. Life, from all outward appearances, was stable and calm. Yet, even amidst the apparent perfection, subtle cracks were forming, imperceptible, almost invisible at first. At the office, Emma greeted her coworker Mark, who leaned against the doorway, his casual smile seemingly effortless. "Hey, Emma, big day today, huh?" "Yes," she replied, glancing at the schedule pinned on the wall. "We've got the fundraiser tonight. I just need to finish these letters to sponsors first." Mark nodded, leaning closer, a shadow of something she couldn't quite place flickering in his expression. "If you need any help, you know I'm around." Emma smiled politely, but felt a prickle of unease. She couldn't explain why. Mark had always seemed friendly, charming even, but there was a subtle edge today, an almost imperceptible intensity in his gaze. She shook her head, telling herself she was overthinking. Her best friend, Anna, arrived shortly after, bubbling with energy. "Emma, you won't believe what happened yesterday," she said, launching into a story about a neighbor's cat that had climbed the wrong tree. Emma laughed along, but something in Anna's tone felt rehearsed, forced. It was a small, fleeting thought, and she brushed it away. The day passed with ordinary chatter, paperwork, and the usual hum of office life. Nothing alarming, at least not on the surface. But when Emma returned home that evening, a quiet tension had settled over the neighborhood. The air felt heavier, and the normally friendly streets were empty. Emma's dog, Max, barked sharply as they approached the front door. She knelt to pet him, laughing nervously. "Relax, Max, it's probably nothing." Yet when she opened the door, she noticed something strange. A small envelope slipped under the mat. Curious, she picked it up. It was plain, no markings, no sender. Inside, carefully folded, was a watch she had misplaced weeks ago. Her heart skipped a beat. She was certain it was lost forever. She held it tightly, the warm familiarity of the watch doing little to calm her growing unease. Who would know she had lost it, and why return it this way, anonymously? That night, Emma tried to ignore the gnawing feeling of being watched. She locked all the doors, double-checked the windows, and sat on the couch with Max curled at her feet. The house was quiet, too quiet, as if it were holding its breath. As she sipped her tea, she glanced at the reflection in the window. At first, she thought it was a trick of the light, but then, there it was. A shadow moving quickly across the yard, too deliberate to be an animal or the wind. She blinked, heart pounding, and it vanished. Emma told herself she was imagining things. After all, Willow Creek had been safe for decades. Nothing like this had ever happened here. Yet the image lingered, refusing to fade. The next morning, life carried on with its usual rhythm. Neighbors waved, kids ran past on bikes, and Emma tried to regain her sense of normalcy. But her mind was restless, scanning for signs of danger, for clues. At the charity office, she noticed little inconsistencies that gnawed at her. Mark seemed to know what she was planning before she said anything. Anna laughed at jokes she hadn't told. Even Detective Harris, a retired officer who volunteered with the charity, gave her a fleeting look that suggested he knew more than he let on. Every interaction, every smile suddenly felt layered with hidden meaning. By late afternoon, the unease had grown into something heavier, a weight pressing against her chest. She walked home briskly, glancing over her shoulder every few steps. And then she saw it, another shadow just at the edge of the driveway, slipping behind a tree before she could get a clear look. Her fingers trembled as she inserted her key into the lock. Something had changed. Someone or something was watching her, following her, maybe even planning. That night, as the house settled into silence, Emma heard faint, deliberate footsteps outside her bedroom window. Max growled low in his throat. Emma froze, her heart thudding loudly in her ears. She strained her eyes, peering into the darkness, but saw nothing. A soft slip of paper slid under her door. With shaking hands, Emma picked it up. Written in precise, almost elegant handwriting were 3 words that made her stomach turn. "You shouldn't trust anyone." The words echoed in her mind, refusing to fade. Emma stared at the note, gripping it as though it were a lifeline, and realized that her life, her carefully constructed, seemingly perfect life, was no longer safe. Someone had breached the walls of her trust, someone close enough to know her routines, her thoughts, her secrets. Her first instinct was disbelief. Could it really be someone she knew? But as the minutes passed, dread settled over her like a heavy fog. The warning was clear, the danger was real, and most terrifying of all, it was closer than she had ever imagined. Emma sat on the edge of her bed, Max resting his head on her lap, and tried to steady her racing mind. Tomorrow, she promised herself, she would figure out what was happening. She would uncover the truth. She would find out who, among those she trusted completely, was hiding a darkness beneath their friendly smiles. But as the night deepened and the wind whispered softly outside her windows, one thought refused to leave her. The murderer was already beside her, and she had no idea who it was. The morning sun barely penetrated the dense fog that had rolled over Willow Creek. Emma Collins felt the weight of the previous night pressing down on her. She hadn't slept well, not from exhaustion, but from the gnawing sense that someone was always there, just out of reach, watching. Every creak of the house, every rustle outside her window made her pulse race. Max, usually calm, refused to leave her side. He paced nervously, sniffing the air, his ears perked. Emma tried to brush it off as paranoia, but deep down she knew something had shifted. Her life, her perfect life, had cracks she had noticed, cracks someone was exploiting. She began noticing subtle things that day. A coffee cup left in the office kitchen with lipstick that wasn't hers, files on her desk slightly moved from where she had placed them. Mark's usual charm was now tinged with something insidious, and Anna's laughter seemed sharper, calculated. It wasn't just coincidence anymore. Someone close was hiding something. Emma decided to take matters into her own hands. She started a journal, carefully recording every oddity, every inconsistency. She noted every conversation, every glance, every shadow that passed her window. She knew she couldn't rely on anyone else. Detective Harris was busy, the police hadn't been contacted, and asking friends for advice could tip off the very person she was trying to catch. Her first clear sign that danger was closer than she imagined came that afternoon. While organizing files at the charity office, she noticed her purse was slightly open, zipper undone. Something inside, a small notebook she used to track her thoughts, was missing. She hadn't touched it since that morning. Her stomach twisted. She hurried home, her mind racing through possibilities. The streets were eerily quiet, fog curling around the lampposts like fingers. At the front door, she froze. Max growled low, his hackles raised. Something had been inside.
The lock showed no signs of forced entry. Someone with a key? Someone she trusted? Inside, Emma found a chilling message scrawled across her living room wall, written in red lipstick that made her stomach churn. "Watching you is fun." Her hands shook. She wanted to scream, to run, to call for help, but fear rooted her to the spot. Max barked sharply at the shadows, but the room was empty. Everything else in the house seemed untouched, yet the message burned in her mind. Whoever did this was playing a game, and she was the unwilling participant. Over the next few days, the tension escalated. She installed hidden cameras inside her house, keeping them disguised in corners and shelves. Each night, she reviewed the footage meticulously. One night, she caught movement, a figure creeping across her living room at 2:37 a.m., moving with careful precision. It was someone she knew. The figure glanced at the camera, as if sensing it, then froze. Emma squinted at the image. It was Anna, her best friend, her confidant, the person she trusted more than anyone. The betrayal hit harder than she could have imagined. Emma wanted to confront Anna immediately, but she hesitated. Panic twisted her stomach. What if Anna was dangerous? What if she attacked? She needed evidence, certainty, something concrete. Mark's behavior grew more suspicious at the same time. He began asking odd questions about her schedule, making offhand comments about her habits. When she tried to discuss the break-in with him, he laughed it off, saying she was overthinking. But Emma's gut told her otherwise. She knew she couldn't trust either of them completely. That night, she received a phone call from an unknown number. The distorted voice on the line made her blood run cold. "It's already too late to hide." The line went dead. Emma dropped the phone, her body trembling. Every instinct screamed at her to flee, yet she stayed, rooted by fear and disbelief. How could the people she loved, the people she trusted, be plotting something so sinister? Determined not to give in to terror, Emma began setting traps. She left personal items in unusual places, hoping to catch the intruder in the act. She also started observing her friends more closely, noting their routines and inconsistencies. Every glance, every smile, every word was now analyzed through a lens of suspicion. The next night, she caught a glimpse of movement in her peripheral vision. A shadow slipped through her living room, moving toward the kitchen. Emma froze, holding her breath. She reached for the baseball bat she kept by her bed. Slowly, she followed the shadow. The figure paused, then turned slightly. Emma gasped. It was Anna. "Emma, what are you doing?" Anna's voice was calm, almost too calm, but there was a flicker of panic in her eyes. Emma stepped forward, heart hammering. "Why are you here? Why are you doing this?" Anna smiled faintly, almost mockingly. "Doing what? I just wanted to check if everything was okay." Emma's mind raced. Every ounce of instinct told her it was a lie. She wanted to call for help, but she couldn't risk it, not yet. She needed proof, something undeniable. Anna lingered for a moment, then slipped out of the house silently, leaving Emma shaken but more determined ever than before. She knew now without a doubt the danger wasn't coming from strangers. It was from the people she trusted the most. The following day, Emma noticed more subtle signs of manipulation. Items she had moved were returned to their original places. Emails she hadn't sent were drafted and left on her computer. Every action she took seemed anticipated, controlled. It was as if someone had a map of her life, knew every move before she made it. Emma decided she couldn't wait any longer. She needed to confront the situation strategically. She reached out to Detective Harris, explaining everything in precise detail. Initially, he seemed skeptical, but as she presented her notes and the footage from her cameras, he finally realized the seriousness of the threat. "Emma, this is serious," he said, voice low, eyes grave. "If Anna's involved, you have to be careful. People close to you can be the most dangerous." Emma nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. She had suspected it all along, yet hearing it from a professional confirmed her worst fears. The person who had seemed closest to her, the one she had confided in, laughed with, shared her secrets with, was now a potential murderer. That night, Emma prepared herself for what might come. She secured every door, every window, and armed herself with more than just courage. She armed herself with knowledge, with observation, with vigilance. But as she lay in bed, the house silent except for Max's soft breathing, one thought refused to leave her. She was not safe. Somewhere outside, or perhaps inside, the person who had been watching, waiting, planning, was still out there, and they were closer than ever. Emma didn't know it yet, but this was only the beginning. The shadows were tightening around her life, circling with patience, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Every friend, every neighbor, every smile now carried the possibility of danger, and Emma, once so trusting, would soon learn that sometimes the greatest threat comes from the people you love most. Her heart pounded as she drifted into a restless sleep, the night air thick with tension. Somewhere hidden just out of reach, eyes followed her. A predator was patient, a predator was clever, and the next move belonged entirely to them. The interrogation room smelled of stale coffee and disinfectant, a place where truth was supposed to surface, but often didn't. Mark Hale sat alone at the metal table, hands clasped so tightly his fingers had gone numb. He had asked for a lawyer, then waved one off. Whatever was coming, he wanted it over with. Detective Clara Whitmore entered quietly, a thin folder tucked under her arm. "You tried to leave town," she said, sitting across from him. "That doesn't look good." Mark gave a hollow laugh. "Nothing about this looks good." Clara opened the folder and slid out a photograph. The family garage, luminol glowing bright against the concrete floor. "That's your blood?" she asked. "No," Mark said quickly. "Daniel's." "And how did it get there?" Mark stared at the image, his breathing uneven. "Because that's where he fell." Clara didn't react. She let the silence do the work. "He came home angry. Dad wasn't there. Mom was asleep. We argued. He shoved me. I shoved back. And he hit his head," whispered Mark. "On the workbench. He dropped, just like that." Clara's eyes narrowed. "You expect me to believe you killed your brother by accident, and then what? Everyone else covered it up?" Mark swallowed hard. "I didn't mean to kill him." "But you moved the body," Clara said. "You buried him in the woods." "Yes," Mark said, tears finally spilling, "because Dad said it was the only way to protect Mom." Clara closed the folder. "You're lying," she said calmly. Mark looked up, startled. "What?" "You're lying about something important, and you're not very good at it." Before Mark could respond, the door opened. James Rowe stepped in, his face grim. "We just got something," he said to Clara. "You're going to want to see this." Across town, the family cabin stood silent, half hidden by trees and neglect. It was a place meant for weekends and fishing trips, now wrapped in police tape. Inside, officers found a jacket buried beneath loose floorboards. Daniel's jacket, stiff with dried blood, and inside the pocket, a crumpled receipt dated the night of his death, time-stamped hours after Mark claimed Daniel was already dead. "Someone else was here," James said, "after the fight." Clara nodded slowly. "Mark's covering," she said, "but not for himself." Evelyn Hale sat alone in the interview room, her eyes red, her face hollow. She had stopped crying hours ago. Now there was only exhaustion. "You raised 2 sons," Clara said softly. "You know when someone is lying to protect someone they love." Evelyn looked up sharply. "Mark didn't kill Daniel," Clara continued, "but he thinks he has to take the blame, for you, or for his father." Evelyn's lips trembled. "He was always the strong one, always cleaning up messes." "What happened that night?" Clara asked. Evelyn shook her head. I can't." "You already are," Clara said gently, "by staying silent." Evelyn's composure shattered. "It wasn't supposed to happen," she sobbed. "They were shouting. I heard everything." Clara leaned forward. "Who?" "Richard and Daniel." Her breath caught. Daniel told his father he had copies of the financial records, that he'd go to the police in the morning. And then Richard lost control. Richard Hale was arrested less than an hour later. When officers knocked, he didn't resist. He simply looked tired. At the station, he sat upright, hands folded, eyes fixed on the table. "I didn't plan it," he said before Clara even spoke, "but I won't let my son rot in prison for me." Clara waited. "He came at me," Richard continued, "accusing me, threatening to destroy everything. I pushed him away." "And he fell," Clara said. "Yes," Richard replied. "He hit his head. I knew immediately. He wasn't breathing." "What did you do next?" asked James. "I panicked," Richard said quietly. "I called Evelyn." The truth spilled out in pieces. Richard and Evelyn had cleaned the garage together, hands shaking, hearts racing. They wrapped Daniel's body in a tarp and waited until Mark fell asleep. Richard drove alone to the woods and buried his son beneath the trees where they once camped. Later, guilt consumed Evelyn. She retrieved Daniel's phone, unable to destroy it. She turned it on just once, hoping to hear his voice again. Instead, she triggered the signal that unraveled everything. Mark had suspected something from the beginning. When the police arrived, he decided to do what he always did: protect the family. He lied. But one detail still didn't fit. "The jacket," Clara said. "Why was it at the cabin?" Richard hesitated. "Because I went back," he admitted. "I thought I heard something, thought someone had seen me." That fear drove him to hide evidence in a place that felt safe, but safety had already disappeared. As dawn broke, Mark was released from custody. He didn't look relieved, only broken. Evelyn sat across from him in silence. "It's not your fault," he whispered. Evelyn nodded once. "I know." Across the hall, Richard Hale signed a formal confession. As he was led away, he turned back towards his family. "I built everything for you. I just didn't know when to stop." No one answered, because the lie that once held them together had finally shattered them beyond repair. And yet, even as the truth came out, Clara Whitmore felt it. This wasn't over, because justice would come next, and justice never arrived quietly. The next few days were a blur for Emma Collins. Sleep came in fits, punctuated by dreams of shadows, whispered threats, and footsteps she could never locate. Every time she closed her eyes, the same chilling thought haunted her. The person who had been so close to her, the person she had trusted completely, was not who they appeared. She spent hours reviewing her camera footage, every frame scrutinized, every detail examined. Then she saw it, a fleeting figure moving with precision through her living room late at night. Anna, her best friend, the person who had shared her laughter, her secrets, her life, was the intruder, the manipulator, the predator. Emma felt a cold shock run through her veins. Betrayal wasn't a word that could capture this. It was terror, confusion, and heartbreak all rolled into one. Her mind raced. Why Anna? Why now? And most importantly, what was she planning next? Determined not to be a victim, Emma began preparing. She moved her furniture, set up subtle traps, and created safe zones inside her house. She also gathered evidence, footage, notes, and recordings of strange calls. If things escalated, she wanted proof that she had done everything to protect herself and alert the authorities. But Emma also knew she couldn't stay hidden forever. Eventually, she would have to confront Anna, and when she did, she needed to be ready for anything. The opportunity came sooner than she expected. Anna arrived at Emma's house under the guise of an innocent visit. She knocked softly, the casual rhythm of her tapping belying the sinister reality Emma had uncovered. Emma hesitated at the door, her hand on the knob. Her heart thundered in her chest, a wild rhythm of fear and anticipation. "Anna," she said, her voice trembling slightly, "come in." Anna entered, her smile warm, her posture relaxed, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of unease, a shadow too quick for the casual observer to notice. She glanced around the living room, subtly noting the new security cameras and rearranged furniture. "I thought I'd check in," Anna said softly, her tone almost syrupy. "You've seemed stressed lately. Are you okay?" Emma nodded, trying to mask her fear with composure. "I'm fine, just a lot on my mind." Her mind raced, every word calculated. She needed to provoke Anna into revealing herself without giving away that she already knew the truth. They sat on the couch, tea steaming gently between them. Anna's hands trembled slightly as she reached for her cup, a small sign, Emma noted. Emma asked casual questions, observing Anna's reactions, her hesitations, the subtle shifts in her expressions. Then came the moment. Emma leaned forward, her voice steady but piercing. "Anna, do you ever feel like someone is watching you? Like maybe someone close to you isn't who they seem?" Anna's eyes widened just slightly, the only crack in her otherwise controlled demeanor. She laughed nervously. "What are you talking about?" Emma placed the footage on the table, a tablet flickering with the grainy image of Anna moving through her home at night. Anna froze, the smile fading, replaced by a mask of panic. "Emma, I can explain," she stammered, her voice trembling. "No," Emma said firmly, "there's nothing to explain. I trusted you. I told you everything, and all the while you were planning this whatever this is." Her hand shook, but she held her ground. Anna's composure shattered. She lunged suddenly, hands grabbing Emma's arms, eyes wild. "You don't understand. I didn't mean to." Emma twisted away, adrenaline surging, and backed towards the hallway. "Stop!" she yelled. Max barked furiously. The courtroom was silent in a way that felt heavier than noise. Richard Hale sat at the defense table, shoulders squared, suit pressed, looking every bit the respectable man he had always been. But the illusion was gone. No amount of clean fabric could hide the truth now etched into public record. Behind him, Evelyn and Mark sat on opposite sides of the gallery. They did not look at each other. Detective Clara Whitmore stood near the back, arms folded, watching as the judge entered. She had seen many trials, many endings, but few that carried this kind of quiet devastation. This was not a spectacle. It was a reckoning. The prosecution laid out the story piece by piece: financial fraud, threats, a confrontation fueled by fear and pride. They described the argument in the garage, the single shove, the fatal fall. They showed photographs, blood on concrete, disturbed soil in the woods, the jacket hidden beneath cabin floorboards. Each image stripped away another layer of denial. When Evelyn was called to testify, the courtroom seemed to shrink. She took the stand slowly, hands trembling. "I loved my son," she said, her voice barely steady. "I loved them both." The prosecutor asked the question everyone had been waiting for. "Why didn't you call for help?" Evelyn closed her eyes. "Because my husband said it was already too late," she whispered, "and because I was afraid of losing everything." The truth echoed through the room. Fear hadn't pulled the trigger, but it had buried the body. Mark was called next. He looked smaller up there, stripped of the role he'd played his whole life, the fixer, the protector. When asked why he lied to police, he didn't hesitate. "Because that's what my family always did," he said. "We covered cracks. We hid problems. I thought if I carried the blame, maybe we could still be a family." His voice broke on the last word. There was no cross-examination harsh enough to undo what he had already lost. Richard Hale took the stand last. He did not cry. He did not raise his voice. "I didn't mean to kill my son," he said, "but I did, and every choice I made after that was wrong." The defense tried to frame it as an accident, a moment of uncontrolled emotion, but the prosecution didn't argue intent. They argued responsibility, and responsibility was undeniable. The verdict came late in the afternoon. Guilty. Richard Hale showed no reaction as the sentence was read: 25 years without parole for second-degree murder, additional years for financial crimes. As he was led away, he turned once more toward his family. Evelyn looked down. Mark looked away. The doors closed behind him with a final, echoing sound. Outside, reporters swarmed the courthouse steps, shouting questions, searching for reactions. Clara slipped past them unnoticed, the way she always did. This case hadn't belonged to the media. It had belonged to a family that no longer existed. Weeks passed. The Hale house was sold, the business dissolved, the name became something people whispered about. Evelyn moved into a small apartment near the hospital where she now volunteered full-time. Helping strangers was easier than facing memories. She kept Daniel's ring in a drawer she never opened. Mark left town. He didn't tell anyone where he was going, only that he needed somewhere no one knew his last name. The weight he carried wasn't legal, it was permanent. One autumn evening, Clara returned to the woods. The leaves had grown back. The soil lay smooth and undisturbed. No tape, no markers. Nature had reclaimed the place where truth had been hidden. She stood there for a long time, thinking about how close this case had come to ending differently. If the phone had been destroyed, if the body had been buried deeper, if love hadn't twisted into loyalty at the wrong moment. Justice hadn't come easily, but it had come. Back in town, the story faded into something people referenced in hushed tones, a cautionary tale, a tragedy, a reminder. A family undone not just by a crime, but by the choices made after it. The woods remained silent, but the damage endured.